Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Silmarillion Film Project. This is session number 13 of Season 1, and tonight is a big night. We have finished the pre-production stage of the Film Project Season 7, and it is time to begin the discussion of the season proper. Tonight, we are discussing the script for Episode 1. Episode 1 being the unexpected trip to Gondolin. Right? The What I Did on My Unexpected Vacation by Hurin, Huor, and Hundir. And I am delighted to be joined tonight, as usual, by Nick and Marie, and also tonight by Ilana Mushin, who's joining us all the way from Australia. Ilana, who is the author of the script of Episode 1. Welcome, Ilana.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, happy as always.
And I'm in Gondolin. I'm not in Australia.
There you go. You're in Gondolin, not Australia. Exactly. Yeah, I'm in Gondolin too, except I'm contriving to block all of Gondolin. Like, you know, it's like you can't even see
I found
Gondolin.
this image actually, which is kind of, I mean, I know it kind of rises up, but it seems more like in Gondolin.
Yeah,
rather than,
exactly. Yeah, no, that's nice. That's nice. All right, quick announcements. The main announcement I wanna make. The announcement is Mythmoot 11 is actually happening, and registration will be open very, very soon. We have been having challenges with the arrangements at our venue, but we are finally ironing everything out through the continual perseverance of the Queen of Mythmoot herself, who has been handling these things as she always does. So that is finally getting sorted, and the registration, I am told, should be opened tomorrow. That is, who knows? Maybe it will be open by the time we finish. I don't even know. Probably not. But soon thereafter, within hours of that, is my understanding. Looking forward to Mythmoot, as always. It's going to be marvelous. Down in Leesburg, Virginia, from the 20th to the 23rd of June. So I hope people can plan on that and join us for that. We've got a really fun set of moots coming up. Several already open, a couple more that are whose registration will be open soon. We already have, in addition to the two that are here, which are the ones whose registration is already open, New England Moot in New Hampshire and Carolina Moot in North Carolina, in October and November. We also have Cascade Moot in Seattle and Middle Moot in Kansas City, and Ranger Moot in Cincinnati, which is going to be the fun outdoor moot where we are going to do like lots of large-scale outdoor reenactments. It's going to be really cool. We're going to like reenact the Battle of Helm's Deep and everything. It's going to be awesome. Anyway, so lots of things going on, lots of fun events on the way, especially Mythmoot, which is actually on the way and in fact happening as I say. So, nope. I shan't be tempted, Marie. We are going to, but to look at the map, that is. Let's jump straight into our episode. Episode 1, Enter the Perilous Realm. Love the title. I was loving the little reference, like Hundir's uneasiness about eating the food when they got there. I thought that was a really fun little touch. The way that we like heard evidence of the people of Brethil already starting to tell fairy stories of like a recognizable kind, right? That was really cool. That was really fun. So we have directions here on how to find the script. First, I just want to start off with some kind of general thoughts and reflections. Thinking about some of the kinds of, so I know we talked about, Episode 1, which is like the Gondolin Bottle episode, of course, the beginning of the careers of Hurin and Huor and their cousin Hundir, their double cousin Hundir. So first, like general reflections from, where the discussions we had before to actually, hang on. My very first question is what kinds of things were sort of developing for you guys, for the script team, coming out of our discussions and going into the planning and the outlining and everything? Were there things that you guys were really kind of focused, that things that kind of developed, or snags that you came upon that you weren't expecting, or what were some of the things you guys were kind of focusing on as you were developing the story?
One of our hopes was to kind of develop the culture of Gondolin a bit, because we had the opportunity here to see it from an outsider perspective.
Yes.
Humans have a mortal viewpoint, so it's already very different. They're from very different cultures. So we showed Gondolin being built, and we showed the elves moving there, and we visited Gondolin a couple times since then, but we haven't really explored what their culture would look like. And
Yes.
so the goal was to kind of do a bit more of that, partly because the next outsider character who's going to be exploring the culture of Gondolin is Miglin, who's already there, but he's
Right.
the outsider.
Right.
So
Right.
it would be a shame if we just got Gondolin from Miglin's point of view.
Yes.
So it was important to get a viewpoint in here, and also before Tour arrives as well.
Yeah.
We had quite a long discussion about the sorts of things that like Hua would see on his grand tour, and you know,
Yeah.
like what would be going on, what did it look like, what would come across.
Yeah.
So I tried to kind of just expand on that a bit in the descriptions of what they were seeing and so on.
And really how to have tension in the episode was really a major problem, because if we are told at the beginning of the episode, like right away, okay, so you're here, now you're stuck here, you can't leave. If there's no lead up to that, and then later on in the episode, now like if nothing has changed, right, and then we get to the end and it does change, you know, like how on earth, like there's no tension, nothing happens.
Yes.
Right.
So
Yes.
we had to stretch out like the reveal that they were.
Yes.
I mean, the audience is going to know because they know that the AL wasn't allowed to leave. That's
Yes.
but
Yeah.
we
have
wanted,
seen this before. Strangers who came.
Yeah,
into
so we
Gondolin.
want
Yeah.
but the humans don't know that.
Yeah.
Right.
And immediately, and so how to plausibly do that without oh, by the way, we forgot to tell you, you know.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, you can't leave. Yeah. Yeah.
While still you do still need wait, what kind of moment.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of fell back to the scene in Rivendell in Peter Jackson's film where Frodo's like, "Yes, I'm ready to go home now." And the audience is like, "Sorry, Frodo."
Right.
That's going to last about 5 seconds.
Yes.
Right.
So like we had to think about the same idea of what they were trying to capture there, of it was going to be a hardship for Frodo to decide to keep going in his journey, and that was how they chose to show the audience that. And we wanted to show what it would cost these guys to hear the news that they can't leave.
Yes.
So you had to know them well enough and understand what was at stake before they get the reveal.
Well, and that was another challenge, was we have to introduce these characters ab initio, like we've never seen them before. So like in the first act, we had to establish, you know, where they were in relation to each other and on their, you know, their different dispositions to things, so that their reactions in Gondolin would make sense with the character that we've been developing. We didn't
Yes.
have a lot of time to do that.
Right. Right. Exactly. And you know, one of my biggest reactions to this episode script is I was delighted by how the three characters worked. Right. I mean, that was one of the decisions I remembered us making. You know, the question of like, do we bring a third person along? Do we bring Hondir along? And I am so glad we brought a third person along, because that, even just like without thinking about them as people, right? The way that we were able to have those three separate reactions, right? Huor's, you know, elf-philic reaction, right, and Hondir's elf-phobic reaction, and then Hurin in the middle. And if we only had Hurin and Huor, we would not have been able to have so rich an experience. I was struck by how well it worked, and I think it was a combination of two things. It was a combination both of their reactions, the three of them, and also of those scenes, Ilana, that you were just talking about, and that Nick was alluding to, the Gondolin development scenes, right? The Gondolin culture scenes, seen not only from a stranger's perspective but from a human perspective, right? And I was struck by how well this whole episode worked as a really strong reminder of the difference between elves and humans, right?
I was conscious of that also because this is first episode of a season. So
Yep.
it's not just introducing the new characters, it's reminding people what's at stake and what the stories are and what the races are and all of the things, like even what the Silmarillions are. You know,
Yes.
like I mean,
Yeah.
just reminding viewers where we are in a story that's been going for several seasons.
Yes.
So, like that was all kind of
Yeah.
part of the job.
Well, and in addition, there's kind of a particular pressure on the elf-human cultural divide, right? Given that we just had the Baron and Luthien story, right? So, like, last season, we were just kind of busily bridging that gap, between elves and humans. And obviously, there was a good deal of, uncertainty, right? There was a good deal of tension along the way. It's not like we ignored the difference between humans and elves in the Baron, but simply like it was really good. I felt it was really good after like the long Baron and Luthien process, because Baron and Luthien, like by the end, we're like Baron and Luthien themselves, and we as viewers are in like a totally different place, right? It isn't so much that humans and elves, like the gap between human and elf gets bridged so much as Baron and Luthien themselves get like separated out and put into a completely different category from both, right? So that sort of reset, right? Like, oh yeah, here's human culture, here's elf culture, here are some of the just that was I felt a really, really important reset that's going to be necessary, that's going to be really important for the rest of the season, I felt. So that worked really, really well.
Yeah, it's good. We had that time in Brethel in the first part to, this is the human culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so between what we saw, the opening bit in Brethel, and then the shift to Gondolin, and the huge shift, like that how much of that we could see, how much of that was borne home, and then the sort of the three different reactions by the three human characters, then served like having first reestablished the huge cultural and outlook differences between humans and elves, to then show here are the different things that happen when humans and elves come into contact, right? Sometimes you end up with a Huor situation, sometimes you end up with a Hondir situation, right? Yeah, as I say, I was delighted by how well that worked overall. There were moments. One of the kind of questions that I had before I read the script, not after reading the script, but before, was, are we going to be able to establish in this episode, like, why this matters? Like, is this anything but an interlude? Because it's not even in like Silmarillion, it's not obvious, right? I mean, of course, it's easier in the Silmarillion because it's just a short little anecdote, right? It's just a couple paragraphs that we get, essentially.
Paragraph.
Yeah, describing this. So Tolkien doesn't have to make a really big deal out of it, but taking an entire episode in this, what is the function of it? What is the purpose of it? What do we...
Well, I've got Turgon asking the same question in the script.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think, some of it I don't think we're going to resolve.
Right.
Because Tolkien. But, it got me thinking, Turgon kind of has a sense of what Gondolin's for and what his role is, and he's pretty fixed on this. And then the humans come. And I wanted to kind of leave it because he's got to, this is part of the impetus for them to join the battle. And
yes.
So thinking like, okay, it's not the sign I was thinking, but like, is this a sign, and so on. And then of course it's a disaster. So when he completely shuts shop, you can kind of understand that he's like, okay, that wasn't the sign. Like,
right,
you know,
yeah. In retrospect, I think we misread that one,
yeah,
people.
I mean,
yeah.
I think he got burned from it, is how I was imagining that goes. But that it really, you know, in the end, like Hurin's plea in the last scene, you know, kind of affects his decision making. We don't need to see that, but that's, I think, what happens there. So that you know, in terms of our story, that has an impact.
Yeah.
And then Gondolin's going to serve its purpose as a refuge, because all of the remaining elves are going to go to Gondolin after the battle as well.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yes. So that was another of the challenges, was to make sure we got enough in this episode to make sense of Turgon's arrival at the Unnumbered Tears. If we just portray Gondolin as static and it's always the same all the time, then to have them suddenly march out at the end doesn't fit. So there had to be enough happening in this episode that points in that direction that we'd be like, oh, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was saying, I mean, Turgon's wise enough. That's why, like, right from the start, he's going, okay, what does this mean?
Right.
Like, how do I read this? You know? Right. And this is really still puzzling him years later, which is, you know, not what, you know, Hurin wants to hear.
Right.
So it's not like we get to the end of the episode and suddenly he's thinking about these things. This is part of what's going on for him as soon as they show up.
Yes, and we got to hear. I was really interested in the those moments, which of course were in part connecting it with the Baron and Luthien timeline, right, and helping us to contextualize our leap backwards in time at the beginning of this season. But it also that the moment when they see Tall Syrian fall in the light show in the sky, right, and then the fact that it was Glorfindel, wasn't it, who was this is a sign. This that looks like a sign to me, right? Like, look at that. There's a sign. Yeah. Maybe we should go and do something. And you know, and Maegwyn resisting that. And anyway, so like the fact that this is clearly up for discussion, I felt that was such an important thing to establish, and it was really. It was a very good use of time, of script time in that way, because if we're going to, the challenge with the Gondolindrim intervention into, the battle at the end, is that if we want in any way to preserve the suddenness and surprise of that, right? If we preserve that, then there's not going to be any time to discuss it. Right? I mean, there is no opportunity, like meeting them on the battlefield. There's no opportunity for a conversation about like, so, Turgon, tell me why you came out. Well, let me explain our rationale for why we came out. Like, you don't even have time for that conversation. Like, we're immediately into the battle and then we're fleeing the battle, right? So, so really the only other choice would have been either to just not explain it at the risk of it seeming, Ilana, as you were saying, completely like a sudden and unexplained pivot from the Gondolindrim policy, right? Or to anticipate it by having some Gondolin scenes where, we see Turgon debating and deciding he's going to go out to the battle, right? Which ruins the suddenness and surprise of the Gondolindrim appearance.
Hopefully we planted enough seeds in this episode. Idril sort of suggesting maybe they should be preparing, at least.
Right.
Yes. That's the only scene that has no humans in it.
Oh, right. Yeah. The Idril and Turgon one at the end. Yeah. Yeah.
It puts me in mind of Aragorn's arrival at the Pelennor Fields in a lot of ways, because while Tolkien does not tell you that is going to happen, and you're not looking, it's literally unlooked for. You're not looking for it to happen. But he did say, okay, we're going to go and do some things,
right?
And it may be that we will meet on, on the field with though all the hosts of Mordor lie between, so it's set up. It's a potential future that could happen.
Yes.
But we don't know how it happened until it's explained afterward, which is an interesting choice. I don't think a modern writer would do it that way.
Yeah, maybe not.
And in fact, the filmmakers didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
True of so many things about Tolkien's writing, by the way, right? I mean, The Lord of the Rings, so different from what a modern editor would have made of it. In
absolutely.
So many ways. But no, I agree. I do think that it is. I do think that it can work that way. I was really pleased by that, because now, right, the way that you've set it up, Alana, all we need now is a very small, like a few minute dilation of the meeting between Turgon and Hurin being glad on the battlefield, right? Mm-hmm. Like a 4-line exchange between the two of them will be enough to follow up what happened and show how he has continued to process this conversation that they had and decided that for them too the time has come to
I would want to at least a shot of Turgon later on in the season, seeing the eagles flying overhead to hint that he knows what's happening. Yeah. That's really then the only question, because at least Aragorn knows what's going, where he needs to be and when.
It's true. Aragorn does have a specific appointment. Yes. Right. Whereas Turgon does not. Yes. Yeah. Agreed. No, and that's fine. Yeah. I don't think that. I mean, even when's it going to happen? Episode 10, 11?
Yeah, like 8 or 9, something like.
No, I mean when they come out. When they come out, it's going to be like 11-ish.
Yeah.
Something like that. So I mean, episode 1 to episode 11 is a long, long time to allow people just to totally forget the Gondolin exists. It doesn't have to be as sudden as that, right? Necessarily. But some reminder that Gondolin exists and that's something that they may still be relevant at some point in the season. I can certainly see an argument for that. But yeah, again, no need to kind of clunkily set it up or give us a council scene in Gondolin or something. Trying to,
because now we've
had it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because that was our hope, was that we could not need a big explanation after the fact.
Yes.
Fact. Because even if you're like, oh, we'll preserve the surprise, no one, we'll wait till they get there, and then they're gonna sit down and talk about what they're doing.
I know.
There.
There's no opportunity.
Like you said, there's no opportunity. Yeah. But even if there were an opportunity, you wouldn't want that. It's one thing for Tolkien to do it in writing with, let's explain how the Pass of the Dead worked.
Right.
In case you're wondering how we got here.
Right.
Like, he can take the step back and tell that story, and you're still interested in it because that's how that works. But you can't interrupt a battle scene to do that.
Right, exactly. Even Tolkien did that in the chapter after the battle happened. Yeah. Melville would. Yeah. There's another not perfect example of what to do in storytelling as a general rule. Big fan of Moby Dick, but
I'm not.
I wouldn't suggest to emulate that.
We've talked about this before.
I know. It's a lovely treatise on whales. Whether or not it's a story, I have issues with.
He does interrupt his whaling descriptions for narrative occasionally, but
occasionally.
Yes.
The last 26 pages.
Corey. I'm reading Name of the Rose. Lengthy descriptions.
Yeah.
I mean, it puts Tolkien to shame.
I know. It's going to be interesting. Yeah, that's our next Mythgard Academy book, Name of the Rose.
Yeah. Really?
It
okay.
Is. Yep.
I did not know that.
Yep.
So to get back into kind of specifics, one of the things I really liked was the way that we recontextualized aging and death.
Yes.
Here. Now, we've already been through all of this, but this is completely new to the Gondolin, and I like how Ilana made it. It's a very brief discussion about it.
Yes.
Right. And the audience will either be waiting for this discussion to happen, or they will, when it starts to fall out that this discussion is going to happen, they'll go like, oh, that's right, they don't know that they die.
That was my reaction. Like I mean, even I was reading it, I was like, oh, snap, the Gondolindrim don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I had not thought of that before we got
Yes.
there. I was like, yep, no, right, yeah, absolutely.
And the use of Hador, I think is excellent to make that transition, because Hador is really the poster child for what Hurin doesn't want for his life, and it's the tool. It's essentially the bullet that's in his gun, when he's discussing the situation with Turgon later.
Yeah. No, it was, obviously, it has obvious bearing on, and not only that, like the way in which, Ilana, it's not only that the mortality of humans is obviously relevant and the primary argument that Hurin's coming back to. Like, I not only need you to comprehend that humans are mortal, I need you to really understand what that means, right? That
Right.
it's...
So Handy is going, you realize you're just condemning us to death here.
Yes.
You're like, kill us now. Because there's no...
exactly. You're
And
executing us the slow way.
It
Yeah.
completely goes over their heads.
Right.
They really don't understand it. I mean, they
Exactly.
don't even respond. Like,
Yeah.
they don't know how.
Yeah. No, but the way that in the end, in that final conversation with Turgon and Hurin, how you intersperse that in with the death of Fingolfin and
Right.
the passing of the High Kingship to Fingon, right? The way that gets kind of folded into it. I love the, Hurin's line, it's like, yes, it is, it is wise, says Turgon, as if like, they had never thought of this before, which they hadn't, right?
Yeah.
About like to
Yeah.
prepare, the heir to take over in case of death, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is a good idea, right? And Hurin's like, well, yeah, like, we don't even consider it wisdom among humans. It's just kind of what you have to do.
Right.
Anyway, but like, so again, the way that kind of came in, not only as a way to like kind of help the penny drop for Turgon and really figure this out, but again, the way that it then becomes relevant and show, to his whole thought process, even to the question about leaving Gondolin and their own, kind of seizing of the day, anyway, I thought that the way that all came together was really excellent.
And it made it clear that Turgon had to be in a place where he was contemplating the death of his father to really grasp this.
Yes.
And that's why that the use of Hurin talking about Hador in that context, in that place with Turgon, is, it seems, because how else could you convince Turgon?
But also, like, I mean, Turgon's gotten to know Hurin over the years and so on. So he has a personal relationship for Hurin. So I was thinking, Turgon's response is, well, yeah, Hador's gone, but Galdor's your lord. What's the problem? Like, you're still managing. And he's like, yeah, well, then what happens? Like, you're forgetting the part where Galdor dies. Like, now what happens?
Right.
Now what happens? And because he has a personal relationship with Hurin and Hur and knows Handir, I guess. But he, like, it was, I was trying to kind of bring it home to Turgon that, like, you've got to learn something from this, Turgon.
Yeah.
It's really different for humans. Really different.
Yep.
How did you like the marketplace scene?
I liked the marketplace scene. It was, it's one that was one of the places where I was like, I'd need to see this in order to really feel it. When you try to describe that in words, like, it was starting in my imagination to look like a musical number on Broadway, right? Which is not, I know exactly what we're going for. But I felt like I could definitely see what we were going for. And that is the, should explain for people who haven't yet read the script.
Yes.
The description is basically it's of how harmonious and coordinated everything is. The marketplace. Yeah, sorry.
In crowd scenes.
In crowd scenes, yeah, exactly. So you've got the whole big crowded market, and instead of like a chaos of noise and crowds and jostling and pickpockets and whatever else you would find, you know, in a human marketplace, you have this crowded scene with lots of people going in different directions, but like the description of like how they're like no one is like running into one another. It's almost dance like, and the transfer of goods, you know, it looks almost choreographed and not, you know. Anyway, so again, it was making me the only image in my head that was similar was like a stage musical, right, with a large crowd, which actually is choreographed and, you know, actually doing like dance numbers and using items as props and things like that. And I'm like, that's not I know that's not exactly what's being described, but it was, I didn't have many other visual things to
I was trying to inject as much tra-la-la-lally as I could to Gondolin's culture.
And the barrel elves.
The barrel elves.
Yeah.
And like that's a you know, because we were talking about this and we were like, well, we don't want we want him to be out among the people to kind of experience their culture and what that looks like. But we don't want a crowded marketplace where people are yelling, and like that doesn't seem very elvish. And so maybe it's all done very quietly and people just kind of like walk through and but then it started to feel a little Borg, right? So I forget it.
Yes. Borg. Also, I see. So I almost missed your word there. Yes. We don't want them to be like the Borg. Yeah.
No. But also, we're calling it a marketplace. I'm not convinced they have a market economy.
Right.
So, you know, it's a crowd and so on, but it's not necessarily like transactions are taking place and, you know, there's haggling and bartering.
Right, yeah, there's not going to be bartering.
We certainly wanted it to be unclear to the viewer what determines who is getting what and how that occurs.
And yet they are very clear, and like they're just kind of doing exactly. It. And yeah,
exactly.
Yes, that there would be some kind of convenient central location for goods exchange makes perfect sense, even if they are a wholly and happily communal society with no private property whatsoever, right? It would still make sense that like those who, you know, produce, you know, woolens would bring them to a place where people could get them while also getting food from somewhere else. And
who hasn't been able to work it out after hours walking amongst them. He has to ask Glorfindel. Like, where's all the stuff coming from?
right. That was one of the things when I was thinking about, and it was interesting, right? Because it's Gondolin, right? So obviously there are going to be amazing vistas, right, in lots of scenes in here.
Yes.
But honestly, even more than like the magnificent scene from the top of Turgon's tower, the thing that I most wanted to actually see of the things that you described was exactly that moment when then Glorfindel takes Huor up and shows him out across Tumladen, and he sees the fields and the herds and the and the you know, like all the different, like basically all the resources, right, and the differences there, which sounded so much like I'm thinking of those descriptions in Tolkien's letters, right, where he's talking about like the difference between like Ensign elves and like Tom Bombadil and the Entwives and stuff, and anyway, like it's where I don't, you know, like would elves fence in livestock, right? I don't think they would, right?
Yeah. And they go in the Gondolin.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, just seeing all of that, the view across Tumladen, I was like, okay, that would be really, really awesome to be able to see not only the beauty of the valley, you know, sweeping up into the mountains, you know, on the far side, but and
it also contextualized then what Hurin and Handir had been doing.
Yes.
Yes.
we thought it best to get Houndier out of the city.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And so Hurin's being a good cousin, really.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's coming across that Hurin's a bit conflicted about things.
Yes. Yes.
He's a frustrated action man.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I was going for.
Yep.
And in reality, what else could these guys be doing?
Yeah.
Like,
seriously.
What task are they qualified to do in Gondolin?
Right.
That's right.
Hooer is just kind of like pursuing higher education, and that's great for him, right? But not everybody's cut out to do that.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah, and you're right. It was a good idea to get Houndier out of the city so as to minimize the number of philologists that get punched in the face over the course of the time. Yes. To admit, I was a little surprised when he decks Pengoth, but I kind of like it. And Pengoth was great about it. Right. When scientific and anthropological curiosity may sometimes go too far, right? And perhaps override basic perception of social cues that Houndier was pretty clearly giving at that moment. Yes. Yeah. Pengoth was delightful. That was because of course you talk about Ab Initio, right? I mean that was the very beginning of someone who's going to have a very long career, right? Yeah. And so to have the first, and that scene at the dinner table was hilarious, right? So funny. When Houndier says something rude and embarrassing, and Hurin's like, I can't believe he said that. And Pengoth's like, ooh, say it again. What was that? and then he repeats it back to him. No, teach me how to say the rude thing you just said.
No, don't say that.
Right. Oh man, it was just, and then Hurin getting like increasingly embarrassed. And anyway, that was so delightful. I really loved that.
I may have had some lived experience.
Yes.
Right. I was thinking that.
And I'm the Penguin in that situation.
Yes.
What? No. How could this be?
No, say it again. Can you say it again?
Yes.
One more time. Slower.
Yes.
Yeah. And with that, I'm glad you like that because yes, I had fun with that. And we have some people I think who are trying to come up with the actual language, but we have very little Haladim language to work with the Tolkien crew.
So we're working on like Proto-Adonaic, basically, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Ish.
I also love the scene where the two older guys come back into the city and they find that like the apartment is just a disaster. And it's like there's paper everywhere, and I just love it. It's so like Huor being in his element for the first time in his entire life is just that's really delightful.
Yes,
and
I feel
he's
like
the youngest. He's 18.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
I feel like he's going to wind up spending a lot of time visiting Mithrim when they get back.
Quite possibly. Well, he's got a taste for Quenya literature now.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be an early date with Rian. He's going to take her to Mithrim to see the wonders of the Elvish city.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was also really one of the longer games, right, to be played there is the setup for Tuor, obviously.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really delicately done in that way. That is, it wasn't,
no words are passed between Huor and Idril.
That, for instance, was one of the things I was wondering if that would happen.
He and Glorfindel have a relationship.
Yes.
And so I can imagine when Tuor comes back, it's going to be Glorfindel who sees the connection and befriends Tuor.
Yes.
As he does. And we can do stuff with that. Whereas Idril will be a new relationship. That's not.
Yeah, we wanted to keep the Idril relationship new
Yes.
for
yes.
later on. It would be slightly weird.
Yeah. Oh yes, you're great. You remind me of your dad. That's not okay.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. So we very quickly determined that there would be no scenes with just the two of them at any point, and that their interactions would be group interactions.
Yeah.
So the scene where she comes out of the council chamber and meets guys at the bottom of the stair, Huor doesn't say any, like, there's no direct.
Right.
That's a conversation between her and not Huor. Yeah. So we definitely were aware of where that would go if we were like, oh, it'd be fun, let's just stick them in a room together. It's like, no, stop.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I was kind of reflecting on is I was like, okay, on the one hand, I know it's of course completely impossible, but the idea of like Tuor having some influence from his father's experience, some relic of his father's experience, right? Like, obviously Tuor doesn't know either of his parents, right? Doesn't ever know either of his parents, so he can't get influenced by either one of them, right? So there's no opportunity. I mean, like,
yeah,
I found myself saying, like, well, gosh, wouldn't it be fun if, like, Tuor, like young Tuor, learned some snatches of Quenya or something, right? So that there could be, but I'm like, yeah, it can't happen. I mean, especially since he's going to be raised with Cinda, right? I mean, he's not going to be. But yeah, it was the connection between not just his father loving Gondolin, because that was the thing that I really loved about the thing I didn't see coming was Huor's higher education, right? Like that he was going to really but I loved that because Huor loved Gondolin not like a tourist was loving Gondolin, right? But like a student, and his whole emphasis was on what he learned. And so it's, again, I kept finding it so tempting. I'm like, okay, well, he can't. But wouldn't it be really cool if, like, something of that got handed down to Tuor? No, but it can't. But wouldn't it be, I can't, yeah.
But I think we'll get a good payoff in the Near-Night scenes with Huor's inspiration with the star. And, like that will track with what he learned while he was in Gondolin.
Yeah. You don't think it's possible that Tuor? No, he couldn't even do that. I was gonna say that Tuor could like have one of Huor's Quenya books or something.
He can't have any of that when he was growing up.
Right.
However, once he gets to Gondolin, it's very recent history that his dad was there.
Right.
So now you've got a guy who
Pangolin
never met his
obviously remember him in Glorfindel, yeah.
Oh, and his scrolls are still there.
Right. There's stuff that he wrote or read that's still there.
Yes.
So when Tuor arrives, as someone who's been orphaned from babyhood,
right,
he's gonna be interested in artifacts that connect to his father.
There can be no artifacts because they leave Gondolin
with nothing,
wearing the oath not to reveal anything about Gondolin.
So
there can't be anything taken out.
Huor had to leave it all there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's my point, is that once Tuor gets there, it's there. Like he could move into his dad's old house.
Into his dad's messy dorm room. Yeah.
Apparently.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, and that would be pretty amazing for Tuor to discover that at that point. But yeah, he can't have been raised with any of it. He can't have had something handed down to him.
I mean, like, he doesn't know. I mean, like, if he's never spoken to his parents, he does not know until he gets to Gondolin that this was his father's story.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And this is the closest he's ever going to be to knowing his father.
Yeah.
And what are the odds he meets Ulmo on a beach? Like, this is how he gets there. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like reading his dad's journal and stuff like that, and yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
we can-
will and so through Huor's love for elvish things, his desire to remain in Gondolin, we have set up Tuor's ultimate decision, right?
Yeah.
The ultimate fate of Tuor. Tuor is going to end up living out his father's dream. You know, Huor's
For as
passion.
long as that dream lasts.
Yeah, Huor's passion
Yeah.
is a generation early, right? But Tuor's gonna live it, right? No, and I don't just mean in Gondolin itself, but I mean all his ultimate fate. I mean, if
Yeah, I was gonna say, which fate does Tour end up joined with
Yeah.
in the end?
well, that's a later discussion to have,
Yeah.
but so let me not jump the gun on that one. But nevertheless,
Fair enough.
yeah.
But the point is, there's a discussion to be had there,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I think we can. I think we can work with a legacy. We just can't have it be a legacy he had from childhood.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just the payoff. But you're right. So the payoff will be slightly delayed, but it will be the greater for all that. I think that payoff is going to be, frankly, it'll be fun to give Tuor a connection to Gondolin
Yeah.
beyond, the very attractive woman
Right.
that he meets there. Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I think that there's a depth to it. For
It,
him.
It's interesting because, like Huron gets his legacy, right?
Yeah.
But there doesn't seem to be any legacy for Huor, other than the fact that Arendelle comes
From you and from
him.
me, a new star
Right.
shall arise.
Yes,
That's
sure.
Tour's legacy.
That's sure, but like, there's no direct connection outside of happenstance.
And for sure, young Tuor would be thinking about that, right? Would be thinking about the total lack of legacy of his father, right? Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a really
So Turon knows somewhat of his family history from Anile.
I would think that Anna would know, yeah.
But that's, I mean, because Rian was with them for, I mean,
Right.
she was
Yeah.
joins
Right,
them,
so- Tour knows his parents' names. He
Yes.
knows who his parents were
Yes.
and what
Yeah.
their peoples were. He doesn't know the story of his dad going to Gondolin because that was a story his dad didn't talk about.
Right.
So no one else could have told him that. So
Yeah.
he doesn't know about the Gondolin part, but he knows that his dad was the brother of the Lord of Dorloman.
It would be
So
really
we have
interesting.
essentially set up this really poignant kind of
Yeah.
Reveal.
when he gets to Gondolin.
It
Yes.
would be
I mean,
really
that's gonna be
interesting
awesome.
if nobody's been in the apartment since then, and like
Yeah.
it's in the exact same condition that
right,
Huor left it.
right.
Right? Like, it
The
would be
dirty laundry
really
still
cool,
on the
like,
floor.
Right, like so he walks in, like Tuor walks in, and he's like walking into his dad's preserved college dorm room with all of his research everywhere, like, and meeting his father for the very first time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah. Because
That's
again,
great.
in Gondolin, no time has passed. Huor
Right.
was just there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. it
Why
was like last
why
week.
go in there and clean it up now? We could do that anytime.
right. Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think that's gonna be excellent. That will certainly satisfy my, again, that desire for that connection. But again, it's not just, it's not just that. It is that desire to have the Tuor's connection. I didn't want to like lose that. Like, no, wait. What I wanted was more than just a parallel, right? To be like a parallel between Huor loving Gondolin and then Tuor coming and loving Idril, right? To have his father's love of Gondolin be merely foreshadowing of Tuor's later and deeper relationship with Gondolin and with Idril, right? that would have worked. Like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I was finding myself I wanted a more direct connection, and I think that'll do it. That'll do it. There's a very real sense, and I mean, Tuor's never really had a home. His entire life, I mean, his home with Anaio, but he won't really feel that that's a home.
And there's no way that that's that they have a permanent home.
Right.
Like they've got to be moving around.
Right.
I mean, he was a refugee essentially, and
Yes.
then a slave. So,
Right.
you know.
Well,
Refugee, slave, and then
They're
refugee.
in enemy territory.
Essentially.
Like they've got to be moving around.
Yeah. And then Wanderer. So yeah, this idea that like he comes to this strange magical fairy city and discovers that it's home. It's like the home he never had, right? That dynamic, adding that dynamic to the beginning of the Tuor story, I think is going to be really it's going to be really powerful. So I just loved how that was set up.
Explicit. Like he gets over his like his initial response is just super excited, right? That's the tour of the city and so on.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, when he's a student, he's at home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, that was wonderful. Let's talk about Hondir. Hondir was
The breakout star.
the breakout star. Exactly.
He is, I was feeling, and I hope we'll do this for the season. By the time I'd finished this episode, I thought Hondir is that like side character who ends up being one of your favorites, if not your favorite character for the show that you weren't expecting to like.
He's this season's Norn.
Yeah,
no, that's fair.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I guess because he goes through a nervous breakdown, I was feeling a bit for him.
And he's so like I also
Nice.
love him in Brethel though.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
in Brethel,
Nice.
he's so at home. He's got a life, and he's so content and happy. And we just watch him disintegrate.
Yes.
That was the plan.
Yeah, that's good.
So that he starts off as, but he's more hopeful than Hurin is. Like he's full of not bravado. I mean, he's genuinely brave and he's confident. He's got his whole life mapped out.
Yeah.
So
Right. The sense of loss for him is pretty clear, and what it's costing him to be in Gondolin. And I think that it would have been easy to dislike a character who is like miserable and whiny, but that's not how he came across. So
Yes.
I think you handled it pretty well, because there was a challenge there.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
I wanted him to be likable. I mean,
Yes, and that's
Wanted
the
us to
line you don't want to
root
cross
for
over the other wrong way with a character like him.
Yeah.
He's
So yeah, you
not
did good.
merely grumpy.
Right. You can see why. You see what he lost,
Right.
and so that setup was really important.
I feel like his reaction to living amongst the elves is executed so much in such a more nuanced way than, for example, in The Hobbit when the dwarves arrive in Rivendell.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just seem to hate it just to hate it.
Right.
Like what? Why are you guys? Why you gotta be so mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
What is your problem? And yeah, he hates it. But there's so much there's cultural baggage right off the bat.
Yep.
That's addressed immediately. And then when he finds out, oh, I can't leave. I'm
Ever.
effectively a prisoner here.
Yes.
a condemned prisoner.
Right.
Die.
Right. I'm waiting to die. Everything I know and love is gone.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's a life sentence in paradise, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously he doesn't find it so, but even there, like it was.
Well, elves are confusing and weird, and
yes,
nothing they do makes any sense. So
that was one of the things that I really liked about that reminder of the the cultural and gulf between elves and humans, is that it really helped. Hondir would have seemed not, if you weren't whiny, it would have just seemed like a jerk, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm just in the way, as you said, Nick, with the dwarves in the Hobbit movie, where it was just like, this is just like, we're just indulging racial prejudice for the sake of it, right?
Right.
And Hondir could have gone that way or sounded that way, right? Like, I just don't hold with this elf stuff and whatever they do, even if it's nice and good and they're kindly and generous. I hate them because they're elves. Like, but it wasn't like that.
Well, and he goes from being this super cool guy, right? Like, he's like the captain of the football team,
yes, he is.
right? Where he's from, and he arrives in this place where he's completely useless,
right? Yeah. And it's interesting because you're right, Nick. It's a different quality of uselessness than Hurin has, right?
Yeah.
Hurin, Ilana, as you said, he's the man of action who has nothing to do, right? So he's frustrated, but with Hondir, it's different, right? You are there's a sense in that Hondir. In part, it's about the romantic relationship, right? That really kind of grounds that. But it's more than just that. But that becomes sort of the focal point of it, right? That Hondir has lost more. Hurin hasn't. He's lost and would have lost things too. But
I think Hurin is clinging to, because he's more elf friendly, you know. And I mean, I tried to establish that he looks up to the elves,
right?
Right.
Yeah.
So he's kind of trying to trust Turgon.
Yes.
Until he can't anymore.
He's able to see that Turgon is a good king.
Yeah.
At this point.
Well, I mean, and he's the brother of the High King. Hurin is grown up revering, right?
So he's not, so Hurin's not going to immediately go in response to finding out he can't leave.
Right.
Oh, well, that's no good.
This is unjust and we're being persecuted. Yeah.
He's going to go, okay, maybe there's good reasons that I don't really understand, but I'll
Well, and so it's not that hard to see why that is the rule in Gondolin.
Yeah. No, he gets it. I mean, Hurin does seem to get it. He doesn't love it, but he gets it, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's lived in the post Dagor Bragollach world.
Yes,
like he knows. He's got a better sense of what's going on in the wider world than Hondir has.
So Hurin expresses his frustration at times, but it's not to say, well, we're going to try and make a run for it or something like that. Until Hondir's mental health just starts completely disintegrating, and that's the trigger for the final to get to
no amount of alpaca herding can keep the calm,
right? But even that, even the alpaca herding, that was one of the things that I admired about Hondir's character, right? Like, in the end, he does he's frustrated and he's depressed and feels like vastly ill done by, but he's not like being a degenerate about it, right? He still is like, well, I mean, he finds a productive thing to do in society. Even his quite despondent identification of himself, right, as Hondir the herdsman, right? Which is both this sort of depressive utterance as well as a sort of almost spiteful utterance, I have been made, I there's nothing for me, I've been made nothing but the herdsman. But
even this is still a come down for them. Like these are I mean, more so for Hurin. How much does being the son of the chieftain in Brethil get you? So there's some status there.
No, so I mean, I thought your captain of the football team analogy was perfect. Actually, like, captain of the small town high school football team is just what Hondir was, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And and whereas Horan was going to live a very, very different life. Horan was going to be king of a large group of people, and have.
This is what he tries to tell Turgon and Idril and Michael, and they're like,
yeah.
It's like, I'm going to be Lord of Dolomon one day.
Right? Yeah. No.
Right about that. Yeah. That's an awkward moment, but
yes.
Yeah. But that's still when they're not yet understanding mortality.
They don't know.
Right?
No, that's right. Nothing is said. Like, it's just an uncomfortable silence.
Yes.
Point.
As they themselves are
they're confused. I mean,
they're confused.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion on both sides.
Yeah.
Like, are you prophesying the death of your father? Like, what are you doing here?
Exactly. What is
like
going on there?
When Hur is looking over the walls and he goes, this is a blessed realm. I wish I could stay here forever. And that's the sort of thing you say, right? In a situation like that.
Yeah.
He's sort of saying it because he feels like he's going to be leaving it soon.
Right. Oh, I loved
your time in the world is short.
Right. Glorfind's confused response. Yes, you're right. Mortality is hard, isn't it? Like, I'm sure that must be very much of a burden. Right. Yeah. The cross purposes there were delightful. But again, just what a lovely touch, right? Even Huor and Glorfindel, who are like totally happy together, right? Like, there's no tension there, and yet even they are not, really seeing eye to eye and understanding each other.
But ultimately, like, really, Hondir, and we didn't know this, I don't think, at the time that we were just talking about this initially.
Yeah.
The inclusion of Hondir really pulled the episode together.
Absolutely.
Like, it would have been a much harder task to establish the tension and the plot of the episode had Hondir not been there.
Absolutely. No, that was my first reaction. I was like, well, thank goodness we sent the third person in there, because that was so good. It was so good.
It was so smart of us.
It was. It was so smart. I was trying to think of, like, what was the reason. I couldn't even remember why we originally said it. It wasn't like because I was sure, I at least was not foreseeing all of the wonderful ways in which it would pay off.
I think there was a hint of it. I mean, you were feeling like it was going to be difficult to pull off with two of them.
Well,
I think my memory of that discussion, I was obviously watching it.
We definitely knew from the beginning that if we had 3 viewpoints, you could do more nuance with it than if you only had 2 viewpoints. If you had 2, they would be pro and con, right? And it would just fall into that dichotomy, and we knew we would probably want more than that. And so having 3 guys lets us play around with someone could be really excited about one part and dislike another, have different things that were bothering them or things that they were liking about the experience, that we could really draw more out. So I think we had that in mind from the beginning. What we did not foresee in that initial conversation was how Hondir's role would play into the overarching story of when is it time to leave Gondolin and how is that going to come to a head? Because even with a 2-year time skip in the middle of the episode, all right, Turgon's had 2 extra years to think about it. So, why would his answer?
So he took a long lunch, and now
one was the fall of the Tolsirian.
Yes,
that was impetus number 1.
Yes,
and then there was Hondir's nervous breakdown.
Right. So having a couple of events occur that lead up to it made for a clear progression in the story. So in the end, we definitely needed him. Even if that was not the original foreseen purpose, the idea of having more viewpoints, that was always baked in.
No, and that was so good. I loved the Tolsirian point of contact, like the reminder of the Baron and Luthien story from a distance. We're already looking back at it from a distance of time because it was last season for us, right? But I loved the way it seems such a wonderful opportunity. There are so few organic opportunities while in Gondolin for reminders of what's happening in the world outside, right?
Yeah.
Some kind of intrusion of the, I mean, other than just like dragging in Thorondor for like an update, right? Which, you know, could be done, but is, that was so much better. And the way that it kind of dovetailed with the fireworks and stuff was really neat. Like with the Gondolindrum celebration of their own isolation in the foreground, right? And then like meanwhile out in the world things are happening right in the background, and the way that those reflected each other I thought was really great.
And to think we could not have used that had we not decided to have the pot of evil in the basement of Silmarillion.
Right off here.
So much
which
payoff.
was so smart of us.
The thing that it does do though is it gives a geolocation.
Yes.
We had to reconcile that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but actually that seems necessary though in some sense, doesn't it? I mean, like Hurin has to know vaguely the part of the world that Gondolin's in.
Hurin's going to go back and shout at the mountains.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and it's not like they didn't know where they were when they got picked up by the eagles.
Right.
Yeah.
So they knew the general part of the world they were in.
Yeah.
Their argument that we can't lead anyone here because we were brought in by eagles simply means they don't know where the secret entrance is. If they're pretending, oh, we have no idea where in Beleriand we are right now.
We could be anywhere in the continent. Right.
Yeah, it's like, no, they know. They know the general vicinity. And I think Turgon would be somewhat foolish to think that they hadn't got that much figured out.
They have absolutely no idea how far they've traveled. I think that's
right.
clear.
Though again, presumably they're not.
And all of that.
Though presumably they suspect that they're not all the way down, like at the mouths of Sirion or something like that. Right. You know. So, but yeah, I mean there's still multiple options, right? That would work, but anyway, yeah, you're right. That it's but I thought that was I was thinking of, you know, old Hurin shouting at the mountains when when the Tol Sirion lights went up and everything. So I thought that worked really well. Yep. Yeah, cool. All right, well, let's so Marie, what I haven't done is actually use the slides yet. We've been having a general discussion. That's okay?
Oh no, the slides were totally optional tonight.
No, my plan was we'll have a general free-flowing conversation. Then we'll go through the slides, and that'll help me notice things that I might have forgotten to bring up. So okay, all right. Looking at the slides here in our A plot. First of all, let's talk about ages and stuff. So the ages I know that we carefully balanced, mostly thinking about worrying about ages of when people get married, and with Huor and Rian especially being a kind of lower bound. That was that, you know, we're wanting to be, we didn't actually want to marry Rian off when she was 13 or something. So so that's, I remember how we ended up at 18 and 21 for Huor and Hurin at the beginning. It was the one thing that I regretted about that is that it made the, like, any resistance even to Huor's involvement in the battle feel a little bit more forced than, I mean, like in the original text, Huor's what, like 14 or something like that, and wanting to go to the battle. So like telling the 14-year-old not to go to the battle is one thing. Telling an 18-year-old he's not ready to go to battle, like, even a modern 18-year-old can go to battle, right?
There wasn't much resistance.
No,
to it.
There wasn't. But it was that was the I only bring it up because that was the one place in the episode where I was feeling like the cost of the aging decisions that we've made. There was that scene wasn't as compelling as it might have been if they had been like 17 and 14 instead of 21 and 18, you know.
There could be a reading of that where that's really just an excuse because Haldir really, his real issue is he doesn't want to send both of these kids.
Right,
Yeah.
both of his wards. Like, so I
Yeah.
got both of your heirs killed. I hope you don't mind,
Which he in
Galdor.
fact thinks has happened.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right. So yeah, more of the heir and a spare situation. You keep
yeah.
the spare at home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we could probably make adjustment to make it more lean in that direction.
I mean, honestly, like the actor could just handle that, like
Yeah.
without any changes to the dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, the actor could just be like, well,
Oh, the Haldir actor, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's, as I say, it's not like I felt like there was a problem in that scene. It was just, as I say, it's the place where
The cost.
Mm-hmm. It was the cost of the aging. There's always going to be some cost to it. I liked the complete lack of interest by Morwen in all of them. Right, that was fine.
I didn't want her to be. I just wanted it to be lack of interest. I didn't want
Yeah.
her to be.
she's not like
snarly.
aggressively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not a jerk. She just is not a groupie either. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was not into it. She was, yeah. But yeah, no, that was I thought it was a suitably strong and independent introduction of Morwen. And now, ironically, Morwen and Rian are two characters we have met before, right? Like they're the only ones in this whole scene that we already had seen on camera, though, because we had them with Baron and Luthien, right?
That's right. So this is just before that.
Right.
Well, they were in the they were refugees during the Dagger Bragalok as well.
Yes.
They were little then, but yeah.
They were little kids, but still.
Yeah, I know we've met them a couple times because
So we've got, we're establishing that the Bayor people of Bayor are still among the Halidin.
Yeah, we had Emeldir there also, that she didn't have a speaking role, right? She was, but she appeared. Yeah.
And I went for the running race because that's some of the description we get about Hur and Hurin as an introduction to
right. About the relative swiftness of foot. Yes. Yes. And it was.
But we wanted some way to introduce them where they were interacting with each other, and so on, before the trouble starts.
No, and again, I the great, to me, the great payoff of that whole opening sequence was, as Nick was describing, Handir being in his element, and then remembering specifically what Handir had lost. Because again, that was always the thing, since we knew that Hur and Hurin, were destined for, they were losing something too, but what they were losing we hadn't even seen, right? It was Handir's loss that was present to us. It was Handir's home and Handir's family and Handir's steady girlfriend, right? That we were that we were seeing being lost. And so I wasn't even, I didn't see that coming, like through that whole opening sequence. I didn't kind of anticipate the significance of all of that, and then it the way that kept coming back, the whole the whole braided cord thing, like the whole girlfriend's favor while I run this race thing. It was really interesting because it seemed like kind of dorky on his part, and kind of trivial and everything, and then just the way that just kind of grows in significance, the way that physical object becomes for him this sort of symbol of what he has lost, and leading up to that that
punch up.
Exactly, leading up to that unfortunate conversation with Pengalath, who repeatedly says again and again exactly the wrong thing to Handir about that,
in the most well-intentioned way.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Right.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. So, like, tell me more about these, like, crude artifacts that you guys exchange with each other. It's, yes.
It's a little. It's like a less antagonistic form of the. Well, I guess the women of your people just run naked through the woods with their hair
Right.
streaming behind them.
Right. Far
It's a
less
little of that.
antagonistic. But yeah. There was, yes.
With similar results.
With similar results. Right.
And then he's trying to be nice. He's like, look, I see it's fraying. I can mend it for you. You know?
Right. And then the elf tries to take away from him the one thing that he still has and holds on to, right, of his previous life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not a good one.
Yep. No, I thought that was super. I just thought that was so cool.
But then he's remorseful, you know,
Yeah.
like he doesn't, you know, he's a nice guy. He doesn't want to be. He might hate being in Gondolin, but he doesn't want to punch up people.
Yeah, no, exactly. And as I say, it's a reflection of how, although, you know, he's, you know, really struggling the whole time, he never just becomes a jerk. Neither whiny nor a jerk. And either one of those fates would have been really easy for him to fall into. No, that's really cool. Okay, so B plot. The Elves of Gondolin. So, okay, we didn't talk about Ecthelion much. We talked about Pengaloth, who was so much fun, and we talked about Glorfindel and his relationship with Huor. Ecthelion, I loved the fact that, you know, they're there by the fountain, and Ecthelion, you know, and they, you know, they're like at Ecthelion's home base when they land. Ecthelion coming to greet him, right, is just, again, another wonderful sort of setup for Ecthelion, you know, confronting, you know, Tuor and Veronwe when they show up later on. So I really liked the sort of anticipation of that moment. It's also the moment of very remarkable and wholly understandable mutual confusion between them, right? Like we find ourselves in the middle of like alien city. What is going on here? And the aliens of the city being like, what are you? Like, what even species are you? I don't even know. I mean, it really is like they've been beamed onto an alien planet.
That's why they're so surprised when Goran speaks Sindarin too.
Yes. Yeah, that wonderful moment where they overhear Ecthelion saying, we're probably going to need a translator here, you know, and then they're surprised, you know.
People never have trouble understanding other people when they land on alien planets, though. Haven't you watched Star Trek?
Right, or Doctor Who, right? I mean, it's, yeah, exactly. Yeah, fortunately, there's always...
Yeah, I was talked down from more radical linguistic differences.
Okay, but so I want to hear it. So what was your idea that you got talked down from, Ilana? Did you want to have them...
I wanted Handir to be much less comfortable with Sindarin.
Okay.
So not know much at all.
Not know much at all.
Right. That was part of the alienation, was he didn't understand. But then we would have, like, that would be hard to convey on screen. So that was
it was one of those things where either he had to not really speak it at all, or he had to be able to at least carry on conversations. Because that nuance that you're describing is really difficult to get across.
And it would make so much of this, it would make the scenes much more cumbersome if they're constantly having to translate for Handir, right? Or translate
that's
him.
Right. Although having just watched Shogun, oh my God, translator. Like, so good.
Yeah.
So how you do translation, like position the translator centrally on screen, it's like I was taking.
I haven't watched it yet, but I'm looking forward to that.
I've heard a lot of really good things about it.
I'm looking forward to that. It's on my list. But no, that's really good to know. So anyway, but yes, okay.
So I was going to have some of that, but you know, I mean, I think it's fine. And I had that line about even the Huldine teach them.
Yeah.
You know.
And it seemed perfectly sensible. Like it was, I didn't have any, like, it didn't, raise a twinge when that line came by. It made perfect sense.
I mean, Howlett's able to casually talk with them at every point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
It's not a big deal. But I mean, the tongue of the Haladin is different from the Proto-Adonaic language.
Mm-hmm.
So I did want when Hundia says the expletive, whatever he says, offensive thing, that's in his language.
Yeah.
And then when Ur takes over and says, "Okay, I'll say some things," he's saying it in his language, which is the language that becomes the language of Numenor. So that is related to the Baal language, but not to the Haladin language. So there's how much we didn't need to represent all of that on screen, but I did want to kind of note that there were two different human languages as well.
I was okay. So I admit when I was my guess as to what you meant when you said you wanted to include more language stuff that you were talked down from was I thought you were going to go in the direction of having the human dialect of Sindarin be very notably different.
Oh yes,
yeah.
That was going to be too. You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, but yeah, I mean, the people of Gondolin have been in the city for 288 years, right?
Yes,
right.
Yes, yeah.
And so
one can only imagine how the accent and dialect of the men of Dorloman, much less the royal house of Brethil, who's learning it kind of grudgingly. Like, surely their Sindarin dialect must be pretty rough, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was where I thought they were going to be like.
You're right. That was going to be a part of the picture as well.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to convey, and even in the end, I kind of waved my hands at the more archaic language the elves would use compared to the humans. But
you could conceivably, a very skilled linguist could conceivably go through the entire show and figure out ways to make differences between the linguistic groups more clear, even when they're speaking English. English is a weird language in that way that there's no other languages that are really super close to it in the way that like the Romance languages are to each other.
Well, you say that, but of course English is spoken all over the world, and
right. But the problem then becomes that you have to now do regional accents, which I can imagine that posing some difficulty
For sure.
Because now you're associating the cultures
and I mean,
that
Tolkien
speak.
himself does, Boromir speaks in the language in an accent, but we don't really.
Or of course the famous thing that he does with Pippin in Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. With Pippin's
So
pronouns.
So I was looking at more, but by the time you're like trying to only work with English vocabulary pre 1500 or whatever, just to write the script.
And I mean, occasionally we suggest things like that. It's only really if a particular word sounds very modern. I'll check. When did we start using that word in English? And if the answer is post 1950s, then I'll do something.
Right.
But if the answer is like, well, this was from the 1600s, but this other version is from the 1400s, it doesn't really matter.
Right. Because at the end of the day, the show has to be understood by modern.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just that what sounds anachronistic to people versus what actually is anachronistic don't always match.
Exactly.
So I know that not all of the things that ping my radar are actually problems.
Right.
So we could have had the elves consistently speaking much more archaically English, which would reflect the sort of conservative Sindarin versus what the humans were speaking in. They would be speaking a more modern. That could still be done, but in the end,
especially when you're talking about young people, because that's there is a convention in which you can portray young people, even in period pieces, sounding pretty modern. Like not in language that's like not in like modern slang, but the way they structure their sentences.
Their syntax especially. Yes.
Right.
Yes. You don't even in a Shakespeare piece, like a Shakespeare period piece, you don't necessarily give the 5-year-old the kind of convoluted syntax.
Mother, I am murdered.
Yes.
Is what they
For
can say when
instance.
they're 5.
However likely that might have been to
Right.
be the way that a 5-year-old might say that.
Is that a quote from Little
Macbeth.
Macduff? Yeah.
Yes, that's
exactly.
Little Macduff in Macbeth. Mother, I am murdered.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
it's, like, so like I try to keep an eye out for certain things. Like I try to keep an eye out for like okays and
Right.
As
that-
you, yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, the reality, I know you know better. Like it slips out sometimes, and I remember a few times writing scripts and then looking back over them and be like, oh no, I can't. That doesn't go there.
Right. Yep. No,
I do go through and I do go through and I consider
Mhm.
vocabulary that looks very Latin
Right. Yes.
and French and
Yes.
see if there's a better alternative.
Mhm.
And even better if it alliterates. It's
Yes.
Yes.
Even better, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's the idea of trying to preserve a little bit of Tolkien's spirit in the writing, because
Yes.
there's only so much dialogue available to incorporate.
Mhm.
But I
That's
included every single last drop.
I
of
noticed it.
dialogue.
You
Yeah.
sure did. Right. But again, you had to write 60 pages of script and you had one paragraph to work with. So
Exactly.
That
So-
happens a
All
lot.
there.
yeah, so just trying to keep something of the flavor of what he is
Mhm.
doing is, little things like that can help.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
That was fun, actually, trying to work out where to exactly to slot the actual dialogue.
The actual dialogue, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured you would save that last speech for the end. Like I was waiting for it.
My God.
Oh yeah, and Myglin's, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Myglin a little bit. Turgon's court is on this slide, and we
Yeah.
haven't talked.
Yeah.
Although we've
And we
referred
have-
to them in other contexts.
This
Myglin.
came up in the forum about whether we were going to do anything with it, and I was thinking, and we discussed this in the script discussion as well, that it's too early, really,
Right.
because he may harbor these feelings for Idril that are unhealthy,
Yes.
but he hasn't been provoked into displaying anything yet because he
Mhm.
hasn't. There's nothing for him to be jealous of.
Right.
Right.
So I had him and Idril kind of being they're the inner sanctum. They're the
Yeah.
inner sanctum. They're
Yep.
the family.
Yep.
They enter and leave with him, but they don't say anything to each other.
Yes.
And so they're not like they're with Turgon, but they don't seem to interact with each other. And that
Yep.
could be because Idril doesn't like him very much or whatever.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I didn't, and it took away from the human story to do anything with them.
Yeah.
I would think visually, and no need for this to come up in the script, but I would think that visually it would be great if we saw like Idril always like positioning herself on the other side of Turgon from Myglin, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
like, yeah.
Dad, can you just stand right here?
well, she wouldn't say anything or do anything. It's just like, when they would stand together, she
Yes.
would never choose to stand next to Myglin, just,
Yeah.
without drawing attention to
I
it.
didn't want to portray Myglin as too much of a jerk at
No.
this stage.
Yeah, no.
Because he's a loyal citizen of Gondolin at this point. He's going to do something heroic in the battle, and he's not a bad guy yet.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so
I
he's
think
not
he was-
particularly interested in humans, but that's
I think he was perfect. I think he was spot on to what I would expect him to be now.
I would characterize his attitude as proto jerk. He
Mhm.
wasn't a jerk yet,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but he was a proto jerk.
There were some things that he said that were like maybe not the kind.
He was demonstrably the most tasteless and tactless
Yes.
and unkind of all
Like-
of them.
Mhm.
Like
but
his
not
reaction
but not
to
over the
new-
line.
Yeah,
Right? Like
it-
I mean, like mortality. How unfortunate.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yes.
Well,
Like, it's
because
not an
Miglin
actually
is
jerk thing to say, but yeah.
he's the only one who's encountered mortals before because
Yeah.
he's met dwarves.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No one in Gondolin's met a dwarf, right?
And he probably hasn't
Probably.
told that. No, because Aradel met them, but that was it.
Didn't go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
well,
was trying to think.
briefly
Maybe some
went
of
back,
some
yeah.
of Galdor's people might have known the dwarves from before.
Maybe.
The Sindar who ended up in Gondolin.
Mm.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
but
I can't.
But it was definitely nobody
can't
knew.
definitively say. Right.
Right.
Nobody was
I
ever
had a
mortal.
line. I had a line where Miglin draws the connection between mortality and beasts,
And it was a
that-
great line.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
But
the reason
unfortunately,
why me to take it out because he would know more about mortality than any of
Yes.
the other elves.
yes.
yeah. It was
That's-
it was a good line. I didn't dislike it. It just
Yes.
I was like, wait a minute.
But he also, his father, I mean, who he had issues with, I know, but like was, given the choice to stay or die
Right.
in Gondolin. So, he's like, this is a serious war. you know?
Yeah. Yeah, his bitterness there
Yeah.
is very understandable.
Yeah.
I
Oh.
don't think that's out of line at all on his part.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Speaking of things that people in Gondolin know or don't know, there was the line from Glorfindel. It kind of initially, like, I was like, wait a second, because Glorfindel says, "Oh, maybe it's the dragon that causes the flume of light." And I was like, "Wait a minute, they were in Gondolin before the
Yeah,
dragon."
but Gondor's been giving them updates.
Right. Well, that's and so like I realized, okay, wait a minute. If he had actually known anything about the dragon, he would never think that that's what.
Right. It
That
was his
was.
ignorant speaking. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so so he's heard about the dragon like third hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was what I liked about it because
Yeah.
like they've been getting updates, but this is all just stories to them. They don't know Glaurung. They don't know any.
Yeah.
They barely even. I mean, they know Sauron from before, but like they don't know Thu. They don't know anything about what's going on, right?
And
Or rather,
that's
they
why
know,
they're
but they
so-
don't really understand.
Yeah. And Hurin,
so
Hurin
interested in-
introduces the word Thu, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was one of the reasons why they're peppering Huron about stories. We they're upfront about their ignorance.
Yes.
Like, don't know what's going
And
on
he's
out
delightfully unable to answer all their questions.
That felt so true to life.
Yes.
Because when you are the one
Pretty much.
spokesman in any search situation, like,
Yes.
oh, hello, I need you to answer all my questions about XYZ. How do you end up handling that? Like, you can't just be a good spokesman if you aren't representing the people that you're apparently representing.
For example, if you spend some time living in a country that's far away from your own, people want to know all the details. And
But he's doing that. He's been in Brethel. This is the other thing that I had on my mind all the time is he's been asked about Dorloman all the time. He's the heir to Dorloman and all of this. But actually, he spent very little time there.
Yeah.
Right. So what answers does he actually have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't know where they came from initially. None of them know that at this point.
No.
Right.
You know?
Right. He knows recent history.
Yeah.
And the elves are like, well, we left 288 years ago, so start there. And he's like, I didn't study for that test.
Yes. Yeah. No, I that was all very interesting. And again, the way that situates Hurin, it was one of the other things that I liked about Hurin as the third perspective, right, of the three of them, right? You had Handir and Huor as the obvious poles of that thing, right? But one of the risks, it seemed to me, was that Hurin in the middle could have looked simply like non-committal or like wishy-washy or something, right? But he didn't, in large part because he gets placed in that spokesperson role from the beginning, right? He is like
a statesman. Yeah,
exactly. Huor is off being a student, Handir is off being depressed, and Hurin has a job, right? And his job, he's the diplomat, right? He's the ambassador.
He is on a state visit.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
He's a visiting dignitary.
Yeah.
And he comports himself as such, and yeah, he winds up spending some time as a herdsman,
Right.
but that's not that doesn't necessarily that's not a
compromises
class
dignity
issue
or something. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Well,
Right.
he likes it out there. I mean, he says like they get to camp out and
Yeah.
Right. Right.
and all that. But he's also really concerned about his cousin.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So he's got compassion as well. So
Yeah, I mean
all three of them do. That's what I wanted them all to be, just likable, compassionate, nice guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where there's no real villain in
Right.
this
Right.
episode.
Which brings me back to Miglin, and again, I thought that was really well done in that way. Again, he doesn't cross that line yet. I mean, this is something, of course, that we've been working with since the beginning of film. Always like wanting to be really careful not to rush our villains along, right? Not to have them to show the whole trajectory there, rather than I mean, it's always so tempting. Miglin comes on camera and it's like, it's the villain. Let's show him being creepy and oily and nasty right from the beginning. But again,
season 1 Sauron.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking of.
Sauron is so
well, and
fantastic.
This episode shouldn't make you think that Miglin is going to be any particular character,
right?
Any particular character at any time. I mean, we're not sort of setting him up in this episode for that. I hope that's what it is. You're more likely to think Glorfindel's going to be.
No, and at most, Miglin felt like he was notably the least diplomatic of them. But that was it. I mean, that's, and that's not
and
hanging
a little
defense.
Understandable given what happened the last time visitors from outer space came. Yep. Like, why aren't they being thrown off the walls? Sure, Dad did.
They didn't try to kill anybody. Yes,
right.
I don't think he has much love lost for his father. I don't think that's
no. But it's clearly complicated, right? Like, yeah. On the one hand, Dad totally had it coming and was a jerk anyway, but at the same time, right? Like, it
still feels like he's executed for showing up.
Yes.
Yeah.
In some ways. I mean, that's not true.
No. I mean, again, there is that whole assault and attempted murder business, but still, like, it's, and again, no, it would be complicated because he would be, I think it's one of the most, I think we talked about this at the time, but I think it would be one of the most interesting acting challenges. It would be on my top 5 list of, like, most interesting challenges for an actor in all of film that we've done is Miglin's expression as he's standing there watching his father get thrown off the walls. Like, that would be, to capture all of what's going on there with him would be really challenging role.
For sure.
Yeah. Who did we have cast there again?
Maxim Baldry.
Maxim Baldry, that's right. That's right. So I'll have to warn him. If I meet him again, I'll warn him. I'll tell him to prep for it. Yeah.
If he, please do that on Other Minds and Hands one day, because I would love to watch that.
See, okay. All right. What I will do, if I do ever meet Maxim Baldry again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite him to Other Minds and Hands to talk about how he's going to play Miglin's character in film. That's what we'll do.
That would be delightful.
Mike, I know you can't talk about Isildur and what's going to be going on with Isildur.
But what you can talk
about, you have no restriction against talking about your film role. So let's go there. Yeah. Okay. I'll see if I can get him to bite on that.
Yeah,
I don't
see
know.
if you can get him to play along with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weirdest interview ever.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. We'll talk about that another time.
Okay. Oh, Nick just had a dangerous idea. I can tell. Let's keep moving. Let's keep going through. Okay, so the slides. So now we go through the acts. But I think we've covered most everything. I'm just going to do a quick check here, establishing the timeline. How long are they in Gondolin again? Is it 3 years?
There's a 2-year time skip, and then there's some time before they leave at the end. So
Okay.
yeah.
No, there's a 2-year time skip, and then there's a several month time skip.
Right.
So
I remember
after
there was a second time
after
skip.
the
Yeah.
tower falls,
Mhm.
I mean, we need time for Beren and Luthien to get to Angband.
Right. They
Yeah.
fly overhead again. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's
and
so
so
it's basically 3 years. Yeah.
so we have Hurin expressing frustration that like they've got evidence of stuff happening out in the world and they can't do anything about it, and that act ends. And then we get it open on them on the Handir having his nervous breakdown a few months later.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Right. All right. So then we're good heading to Gondolin. Right. Their attitudes were there towards their predicament. So, yeah, the show, it makes their arrival of interest to the elves. That was kind of the slowest build of those elements, I felt. Like, first there was just simply confusion and curiosity. Who are you? What are you? How did you get here? The question of, like, why are you here? Like, what does it mean that you have come? Like, what is the purpose of this? I kind of liked the way that question is present, but we lose sight of it because the humans are like having their reactions, right? We get kind of caught up in the reveal of their life imprisonment, right? Their life sentence that they're receiving. And it's only when we get toward to like, let's keep nagging Turgon and stuff, that Hurin comes back to, Turgon has said that there's a purpose for us to come here, right? So we do kind of come back around to that, and that's one of the things
comes around.
Yeah.
So it's reintroduced in the scene in the dorm room.
Yes.
They've just come back. That's like our first scene of them after they've been there for 2 years.
Yes.
And then the whole Syrian thing falls.
Yep.
And then Hurin loses nut on that.
Yes. Yeah.
And then by the time we get to the last part, it's immaterial because they want to get Handir out of there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But Turgon, even in that final conversation, is still thinking about it. Right.
Yeah. And he's like, don't be hasty.
Right.
Essentially.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's what I was going for. That it's like, look, I'm not stupid. Like, I see stuff. I see what you're seeing. But like,
right. Yeah, there seemed to me to be, and I don't know if this is what you were thinking, but in that final conversation with Turgon, there seems to be sort of the moment at which Turgon makes essentially a leap of faith. Like, he's been trying to figure out, like, what is the purpose? Why are they here? What this didn't happen for no reason, right? Why did this happen? And then he still doesn't know at the end, right?
Yep.
But he decides, like, okay, still not understanding, I'm going to let you go because it seems like that's the right thing to do, right? Yeah. But I still don't get it. Like, which is important, right? Because he's eventually going to get it, or think he gets it, right? It's going to lead to the decision to leave Gondolin. And I think,
Hurin's words to him in that meeting are going to weigh on him. So there's the decision to let them go, but then there's also the impact that what Hurin says to him in that scene.
Yes.
Going to sit with him about whether one should act or not.
Yes.
And at what point do you choose to act and so on.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No. So anyway, I said that element was kind of submerged for a lot of the episode, but I did like the way it came out, especially at the end. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, and I think that's because we mostly don't present the elves' perspective.
Yes.
So.
Yep. And then Act 3 is primarily the time skip. The 2-year time skip comes right between Act 2 and 3, right? So Act 3 comes in when they're herdsmen now. At least two out of the 3 of them are herdsmen. One of them is partway through his degree, and yeah. And this is also where we get the intervention of the outside world. So.
And we have the different also in that scene. I was trying to get a difference between Hurin and Huor in the response to the story that Huor is trying to explain about the Silmarils to
Yes.
Sauron's like, yeah, I know it's all about the war.
Right.
And he's like, no, it's not about the war.
Right. Yeah. Good. Then Act 4 is the humans reach their breaking point, especially one of them. Yeah. Yes. Good. When we were just talking about the ending there.
And we had to kind of also like give Huor an opportunity to choose to go with them as well.
Yes. That Huor actively makes the choice. And again, it was delightful to see that sort of come full circle, right? That is, by the time they leave, now it's Huor who has to give things up, right? The emphasis was all on Handir's loss and the things that he had lost, the things that had been taken away from him. It's clearly a real act of sacrifice on Huor's part for him to leave, right? He is now losing. If Handir is in his element in scene 1, right, in the foot race scene, Huor is in the parallel place when he comes back to the dorm room, right? When he's advanced in his studies and happy as a clam there in Gondolin, really found his place, right? And now he has to be asked to give it up. He has to be asked to leave. So anyway, I really liked how that it felt almost Frodo-esque. Like you could have given Huor Frodo's line about like, someone has to give them up, to lose them so that,
Well, and also the one of my favorite lines in Lord of the Rings, which is, with whether you're falling asleep or waking up again when you
right. Yes. Yes. To me, it feels like falling asleep again. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, one of my favorite lines in the whole book. And I was thinking of that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. No, I love how, again, there was even just internally within this episode, there was so much payoff for how that stuff all worked and came together. Very cool. Awesome. Any final thoughts or reflections? I would just say I thought this was so well done, Ilana. I was just really happy
this
with it.
Might be the closest we've ever come to a no-notes script on Silva. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, we're basically at no notes, I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really strong script.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it was great. It was great. Yeah, very good. So next time we're doing our first music session next time. That is exciting. We're gonna we're gonna, like we did with casting. You'll remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about casting, not to decide whom we're going to cast for these different roles, but to set up our casting call, right? To describe what we're looking for and set the task of finding the people who will fill those roles. Here also, we're going to talk about the music for season 7, and we're going to discuss what we want to see, what we want to hear, right, in music for season 7, and what are some of the challenges and fun tasks that we can set for our friend Phil and his musical team for season 7.
You're working on season 6 music.
Yeah, I know. Season 6, I feel like season 6 is going to set poor Phil behind for a really long time because there's such an extraordinary number of, of numbers. Yeah. It's not even really, it's not since the Ina Lindale that like not only so many, but such high profile, musical tasks have been set. So
it's not as much this season, but there'll be some.
Yes. Not as much, but some. So we will talk about those. And then meanwhile, you guys are doing a script discussion for episode 3, right? On Friday the 24th.
Yes.
Okay, so our next session is not in 2 weeks' time, but next week, because we bumped this week back. So we're going back to our original schedule. So we're going to be next week on May 16th for the music commissioning show. All right. And then episode 2, thereafter? We're possibly, never mind. I won't put pressure on it.
We'll get that figured out.
The process will be what the process will be. But excellent. I'm just excited to keep going and talking about more episodes. Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Ilana, thanks again for all of your wonderful work on the script and for joining us here this evening. Great having you as always. And excellent. And I will say, as always, thanks for listening and Godspeed.